This video is meant to show you sort of the beginning of mixing your colors with acrylic paint so that you can start on your secondary colors on your color wheel. As you can see, I have painted my primary colors in their correct spaces, and now I am ready to mix my primary color to get my secondary colors. So again, yellow and red will make orange, yellow and blue will make green, red and blue will make violet. So I've got my palette, which we are using little styrofoam plates this year so that we can easily throw them away and not keep COVID potential in the classroom. So my next step is going to be to decide which of my 3 secondary colors I want to go ahead and start with. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my green because green is my favorite color. So I would be mixing my yellow and my blue. I recommend using the back of your paintbrush for this. So I'm just going to scoop a little bit of my blue into my yellow, and I'm just going to start stirring that up. Now, I know that we will be needing more yellow for other colors at some point, but I don't want to make so little green that I don't have enough to fill in my entire space. So I'm just going to use up my entire section of yellow here and get a nice consistent green. Now that feels a little bit limey, which borders onto yellow green, so I'm just going to scoop a little more blue into that to make more of a green green. Because remember, your colors are relative, so you do not want to put too limey of a green down, because then that's not going to give you much wiggle room for making your yellow green. Likewise, you don't want to put too much blue into your green, because then that will not give you much wiggle room into making your blue green. So that feels like a pretty good neutral green. So I'm just going to wipe the back of my brush off because we do not need paint getting everywhere. And then I'm going to use the tip of my brush as much as I can along the edge of my shape to, again, keep that as neat as possible. I'm going to start in the narrow space here, again with the very tip of my brush. And again, you can outline your entire shape first and then fill it in, or you can do what I am doing and just kind of paint carefully along the edges and fill that space in as you go. Either way works perfectly fine. It's completely up to you. So I'm just going to continue filling in that space, making it nice and green. Now, one of the nice things about acrylic paint is if you do paint something that's a little bit too light or too yellowy here, once it dries, you can paint back over. The problem is going to be if you paint too much of a blue. You'll have a harder time covering that or making your blue-green more distinct. So you do want to mix your colors carefully. So now I'm just going to go back through my green section and just smooth it out a little bit, make it a little more even, a little more solid. Because these are partially graded on craftsmanship. You do want to take pride in your work and keep it as neat and presentable as you can at all times. So So again, turn the page however you need, stand up, turn your brush, whatever you need to do to help you keep your work as neat as possible. So now the next thing I would do would be to mix my yellow and my red to make my orange. And then I would paint that orange. I would rinse my brush, dry it off, and then mix my red and my blue to get my violet, and then I would paint my violet. Then, once all of those are done, I will go back in and I will paint the intermediate colors in between. Now, while I have blue and green on my little palette, I do want to show you how you will be making blue-green. Because if you recall, blue-green is essentially blue plus green. So all you would have to do would be to scoop even more blue into that green and just mix it in. Now theoretically, you could go ahead and paint your blue-green once you have this mix, but it is good practice to go ahead and get all of your secondary colors on there before you move on to your tertiary colors. It just helps keep the wheel more organized and shows a better understanding of the use of color. So as you can see, my green is starting to get much more of a bluish green, which is precisely what I want. Now I'm going to actually squirt just a smidge more blue on there so I can make this even bluer a little bit faster to show you all. But you want to make sure you use whatever is on your palette before asking for any more paint. So I think that's a pretty bluish green there. Now notice what happens if I come into my blue section and mix what I've got there. That would also be considered a blue-green. So that is what I mean by your colors being relative. Okay, both of those would be considered blue-green, but this one is much more on the green side, which makes more sense with my particular color wheel. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of that bluish green actually into this bluish green. Just again to highlight and emphasize the fact that your colors are relative. As long as you have distinctions between each color that go gradually from one to the next in a successful wheel, you will have achieved your goal of creating a full color wheel. Now, during our live demo on Tuesday in class, I will continue on the acrylic example. These videos will be posted so that you can view them. And then we will be streaming Tuesday's class so that you are able to work alongside your classmates as we work primarily on the acrylic version. But I will also finish out the watercolor. I will not finish, per se, all of the colored pencil, but I will get a little bit more of it done. That way, if that's what you are using at home, you have some sort of a reference there. But again, acrylic paint is the first choice for this project because the mixing is just more visible and you'll be more successful with your color mixing with acrylic paint. But I will also demonstrate that with the watercolor paint.